Diablo 4 then, been out for a few weeks now, and old Reggie here thought he'd give it a proper review after spending untold hours in the depths of hell. But hold on to your horses, because this review is for all you people who ain't got a Scooby-Doo why everyone's going mental over the Diablo franchise. I actually hated the past games, thinking they were as dull as a demon's arsehole, but as a dedicated gaming channel, I still thought I'd give it the Cockney Gamer treatment. And let me tell you, my Padawans, it didn't quite go as expected. So sit yourself down, grab yourself a cuppa, and let's have a chat about the world of Diablo 4. So, as a precursor to understanding the points made in this review, I never laid my mitts on the original Diablo, and I barely gave Diablo 2 a proper go. But Diablo 3, now that is where the party started for Reggie and the boys. We gave it a fair crack, but no matter how hard I tried, I found the whole bloody thing as dull as watching a snail climb up Mount Everest. No skill to be found as far as I was concerned. Instead, it's just mindlessly spamming the attack button, slaying enemies left and right, leveling up, and repeating the same cycle until you're wanking off with your Diablo mates playing Soggy Biscuit. And that reminds me, never ask Johnny Two Shoes about the Soggy Biscuit incident at Eton College. Just don't ask. Now, I can't even tell you how many hours I wasted on Diablo 3, but enough for me to call it quits. So honestly, Diablo 4 wasn't even on my radar, but with all the bloody hype surrounding its latest release, I bought the game promising myself I'd put in some proper time before I gave today's review. Now that I've battled my way through the story, uncovered every nook and cranny of the map, and delved into the endgame content, I reckon I can safely say what's right and wrong with Diablo 4. And for the Diablo nerds who will no doubt correct me on whether my fire resistance stat is redundant with your overpowering dexterity stats, you can bloody well sod off. Frankly, I haven't got a bloody clue what you're blabbering about. This review here is for the casual lot, the blokes and blokettes who get laid on a night out, enjoy a pint with their mates, watching football, and have seen sunlight each day. If that's you and you've never touched a Diablo game before, then keep watching. So Diablo 4 kicks off with a right proper fancy cutscene that could give any movie a run for its money. Now, I ain't one to be swayed by flashy cutscenes alone, mind you, but I can't deny that it sets the stage for what Diablo is all about. And let me tell you, these epic cutscenes keep on coming throughout the game, and my only criticism, really, is that I wish there were more of them. Now, let's get to the nitty gritty. There is this fit lass. Her name is Lilith. They call her the Daughter of Hatred, and she's gone and risen up, dead set on wrecking the land of Sanctuary, which is basically the world you'll be playing in. And it's up to you to take on quests, lend a hand to the poor sods in town, grow yourself stronger, and give that sexy demon a right proper beating. Now, I admit it when I'm wrong, and after finishing the game, I've got to say, the story was bloody brilliant. The pace was spot on, the characters were likeable, but for me, it was the script that stole the show. The way it's written, lads, is a true work of art of the English language, and by the end, I was feeling all satisfied and proper chuffed that Great Britain invented such a delightful language for us all to enjoy. Now let's get down to brass tacks and talk about the actual game. First things first, you get to create your own character, so I went with a sorceress and named her Reggie, of course. There's a fair few options to customise your character looks, catering to the fantasies of your average teenage lad. Now I'll be honest, I didn't have a clue what half the stats meant at this point, but the idea of a bird who can sling fireballs sounded pretty good stuff, so off I went on my adventure. And to quickly clarify, I played the game on my PC but used the gamepad the entire time. I didn't run into any issues whatsoever, all the buttons were mappable and easy to use, no complaints there. Now I know there are plenty of you who prefer the keyboard and mouse setup, and from what I've heard it's just as good. Diablo 4 then is highly adaptable to suit your preferred playstyle. When you first start the game, aside from the story cutscenes I mentioned earlier, you'll find yourself waking up in a bloody cave and making your way to some huts. Proper start to an adventure, I'd say, and that's where the sense of deja vu kicks in. Constantly spamming that attack button, flinging fireballs left and right at bloody wolves and whatnot. It's a bit of a bore fest, I won't lie, but what sets Diablo 4 apart from its predecessors is that the story actually kept me interested, and the marvellous environments were a sight to behold, but we'll get to that in a tick. As you slaughter your way through the hordes of beasts like a butcher at Costco, racking up experience, you'll eventually earn a skill point and level up. And when you do level up, you'll get a delicious little aura that obliterates everything in sight. Lovely stuff. It's at this point that you start spending the experience points in the skill tree, and the options for character building are bloody vast. For my sorceress, I had the choice between fire, electric or ice skills, and there are these passive skills that help beef up things like mana. It's all pretty basic stuff, but before I knew it, I was itching to get more skill points and become even more powerful as I realised how one skill could connect into another. I eventually settled on a fire build that would make an erupting volcano look decidedly boring. If I'm honest, this is really what Diablo 4 is about. It's not the story, but rather what gives you the best balance of power and protection and creating the ultimate Reggie. Now, I spent hours playing as a pyromaniac, but what I absolutely love is how easy it was to reinvest my skills with just a small penalty in the form of some coin. Diablo 4 encourages you to experiment, and soon enough I realised that an ice build was the way to go, and once I made that switch I was raining down hell on enemies like nobody's business. It was around level 30 when I had a proper wake-up call. I realised that I had turned into one of those Diablo nerds I used to mock, scouring videos, scheming ways to build up my Reggie for maximum power. I stumbled upon things I never knew were possible, like skipping the basic attack altogether. And as I watched those videos, the language they used started to make sense to me. I was no longer watching porn at midnight with my door locks, but instead would watch Diablo 4 build videos in the hope my wife wouldn't catch me nerding out. Diablo 4 has this intricate system for shaping your character. It ain't just about the skills you pick, the gear you wear, the weapons you wield, they all make a massive difference too. So there I was taking on big bosses, running dungeons over and over, all in the hopes of getting the best loot out there. It's like being the wet bandits from Home Alone. You desperately want a piece of the McAllister's home, knowing that the other houses on the street are a load of shit. And Diablo 4 very much feels like that when you come across elite bosses. And once you hit level 50, a whole new skill tree opens up called Paragon Points, with passive stats now being the name of the game. That's when the real fun begins, my Padawans, and the way you can build your character has so many possibilities. Reggie and the lads would stay up till 3 AM, the missus giving him a proper bollocking for sleeping in late and ruining our romantic pub evenings. The addictiveness of Diablo 4 is real, but only after you get past, I'd say, that first 15 or 20 levels or so. I still found the early stages a bit tedious, but it only made me appreciate my Reggie more once she became more powerful. Now, I've got to say, Diablo 4 ain't the best at explaining all its systems. That overpower score, for instance, still confuses the bloody hell out of me, and I'm not entirely sure how armour truly affects my character and what kind of damage reduction it actually provides. I mean, what does having 100 armour even do? And those Paragon Points I mentioned earlier, at first they are proper daunting without any helpful pop-ups to give you a better idea of what the bloody hell you're doing. But once you push through that Diablo wall, that metaphorical barrier to appreciating its greatness, you just can't help but get hooked. But building your character and fine-tuning stats is just a small piece of the massive playground that is Diablo 4. You see, this game exists in an always online world where you'll come across other players and can team up with them if you so fancy. Now, let's make it clear, this game is 100% playable in solo mode, and I did the whole story on my lonesome. But the option to join forces with other players is always there. The map in this game is bloody gargantuan. It's split into zones, each with its own set of side quests, sometimes numbering over 40 plus. On top of that, you've also got 3 strongholds to unlock in each zone, these boss fights that give you an extra fast travel point once you tackle them and take them down. Trust me, it's a real time saver, and that's before you even get your hands on a trusty horse later in the game. But even so, the strongholds and fast travel points still come in handy because there are world events to dive into, and you'll want to get there in time before it all ends. Picture this, my pedigree chums, you and a load of random players can rock up as if watching a footy match at the pub, a sense of camaraderie if you will, as you take on a massive boss together. And once that boss is down for the count, you all bag yourself some juicy loot. It's a great little spectacle as chaos ensues on screen and the world of Sanctuary unites together in that brief moment. Now, my worries about endgame content were unfounded. There's plenty to do once you finish the main story. You've got side quests, map completion, demon invasions that pop up randomly, and favours to do for a mystical tree, which I know sounds weird as fuck, but trust me on this one, it's a great subplot. And if you're up for it, there are even PvP areas where you can test your mettle against other nerds. But let me make it clear, you're never forced into these nerd battles if you don't fancy it. Now, the hardcore Diablo fans are going to grumble and moan, claiming there's not enough endgame content and demanding even more, and I'm not going to dispute any of that for the hardcore players. But for us more casual players who may only have a few hours a week to spare, there's more than enough here to sink your teeth into. And the world keeps on going, lads. In each zone you'll usually come across a main town or city bustling with vendors where you can sell or salvage your items. See, in Diablo 4 the best loot often requires you to put some thought into how you can enhance the gear you collect. Let me give you an example. You can enhance a weapon with a gem to make it deadlier. And let's say you stumble upon a legendary item with a nifty little perk. You can salvage that bad boy, snatching the perk, or aspect as they like to call it, and reuse it on a different weapon. So even the stuff you salvage ends up giving you useful upgrades for weapons you do like. There are places where you can gamble away some collectible tickets from killing bosses so that you can get your hands on other high-end items, and each town's got everything you need to make your character stronger. Now, a key part of getting these items is diving into dungeons, and that is obviously a big part of the Diablo franchise. They're procedurally generated but always stick to a theme, and you can run them as many times as you like. Typically, a dungeon involves collecting an item or clearing it out before taking on the final boss, which results in a sweeter loot drop. What's even better is that as you progress, the world around you scales up. So even if you've got better weapons and more powerful skills, the enemies, they ain't no pushovers. And it's like Einstein himself got involved in the game design, because when you team up with a level 1 player and a level 100 player, you can still go on quests together thanks to some fancy scaling that's unique to each character. It's a brilliant move by the developers and fosters a real sense of belonging among the player base. And if that ain't enough, you can crank up the difficulty of the world with a world tier option. The higher the tier, the more experience, the more gold, and the more loot you actually get. It's a bit of a risky trade-off, but it's totally worth it. There's a whole lot more I could say, but I reckon you get the picture by now, and that is Diablo 4 is absolutely jam-packed with things to do, and the replayability of the world of Sanctuary will grip ya like Johnny Two Shoes Vice. The graphics in Diablo 4, even with its lock view, are simply stunning. It's a real feast for the peepers. The graphics are top notch, the textures are caked in high detail that you can practically feel the cracks in the stone, the grain on the wood, and the slimy entrails of monsters. And let's not forget about them spell effects. Proper eye candy they are, as you'll see chaos unfold on your screen with sparks and flames flying everywhere. And it's the little touches that I love, like footprints in the sand or even a snake slithering about, leaving its own unique mark. The dungeons are a sight to behold too, with stuff moving about in the foreground, adding to that creepy atmosphere. Diablo 4 is a macabre looking game, but a beautiful one nonetheless. Every little detail is meticulously crafted, and you can destroy all sorts of things, watching them topple over in a satisfying way. The enemies look great too, although I reckon they could do with a bit more variety, because after a while they do actually start looking, and more importantly playing, a bit the same. The viewpoint is a contentious one, and whilst I appreciate the zoomed in view is there to add to the hectic nature of everything, I'd have loved to have zoomed out just a tad more, as things almost get too crazy later on. Now, Reggie here is running the game on a fancy 4080, courtesy of what Johnny Two Shoes found off the back of a lorry. At 4K it runs like a dream on ultra settings, but being a realist here, I've got to admit there can be some stutters, especially when you're leaving cities as the game transitions to different zones. But hey, it is early days, and I reckon the servers are getting a right old pummeling Riley Reid style. I will say though, I've never had to queue to log in, and only on rare occasions did I get kicked out. All in all, Diablo 4 looks bloody marvellous. The sound in Diablo 4 is also just as good. The music is proper epic, it gets you all roused up during dungeon crawls, it fills you with trepidation. The musical score, it really is just sensational. It's so good, they even have concerts where orchestras play this soundtrack live, and I totally get why. It's like something out of a big Hollywood movie. But it ain't just the music that's banging, the sound effects are top notch too. Each spell has its own unique sound. When you team up with other players, it's eargasm time, as fire spells have that roar and swoosh as they go blazing across the screen, whilst ice spells sound all tingly and spiky, shattering enemies as they come near. Everything is done with meticulous detail, but you know what really impressed me? The voice acting. I was worried my dear Reggie would sound like a proper twat, but nah, she's got decorum and she's acted superbly well, and the rest of the cast know how to deliver the fantastic script that they've been given. It's truly glorious stuff. The sound in Diablo 4 is on another level, and one of the best I have heard this year. If the developers' goal was to immerse the player through sound, then they succeeded here, no problem. So, I admit it, Diablo 4, it proved me wrong. Everything I assumed about Diablo 4 didn't really come to fruition. And in fact, over my 60 hours or so, Diablo 4 delivered in practically all areas. I can't wait to get back into the world of Sanctuary and experience the stunning visuals, the captivating and frankly depressing locales. The character building is vast and the loot even more so, and you'll be replaying events and dungeons over and over until the cows come home. Yes, there are some weaknesses, like the explanation of certain systems, the gameplay does get repetitive, no way around it, and a lack of enemy variety is there to be seen, but for the most part, it does everything right. Did the fourth outing take enough risks over Diablo 3? Probably not, but it certainly refined it to allow newer players like Reggie into the fold. Diablo 4 then has made Reggie eat his own words, and I, for one, I'm actually happy about that. And with that, my lovelies, you have a wonderful day. Reggie out.